Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week we have Cameron Abbott once again. How you doing, Cameron?
Time to crack open a cold one. What's up, nerds?
I don't know if there was a this time. I just didn't hear it on my end, but and we have Frank Pisani. How you doing, Frank?
Living the dream.
Living the dream. What dream is that, Frank?
Apparently a bad one, according to this year.
Yeah, the nightmare of 2020. I mean, nightmares are dreams still, so that is. I'll give you that, I guess. Yeah, it's been a week. It's been a couple of weeks.
Do you guys feel like the jokes that 2020 is like a nightmare like are no longer funny?
I mean, I would much rather it not be a nightmare. I'll say that, but and in that regard, I don't know if they were ever funny. I think it was us. I mean, if they're funny, it's us trying to alleviate the anxiety by trying to make a joke out of it. But yeah, I don't know how quote unquote funny I ever really considered them. Um,
I don't know. I felt like a lot
like
of hey, I went back in time and now I'm gonna talk to you about like I'm talking to my old self about what 2020 is like or anything like that. I'm like, I used to really enjoy that content. Now, I don't like. I just like. I think part of it has definitely been like we're getting closer to the election here in November,
yeah.
and just I got my mail-in ballot the other day. Mailed
Hmm.
it in. Like I'm done with my civic duty, and now I just have to wait for everybody else to do theirs, and then we can find out the results. But um, like I'm just like I'm. It's not even just this year. I'm ready for like whatever the hell like monkey paw wish somebody made. Like I'm ready for that to be over. Because like it's not just tied to a year. Like there's something. It's like we're like, oh, 2020 this, but like there's like I'm not saying I believe in magic or curses or anything like that, but like it's just been a wild time, and
Yeah.
I'm ready for that to be over. I'm ready. Like I'm getting into my 30s. Like this would have been like a real adventure when I was in my early 20s and didn't have any care or responsibility or thoughts about my future. But like I'm 30 years old now. I'm turning 31 next month. Like I don't need this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because it's gone on so long, I think that's where the weariness of the jokes are coming from. Because like we're just not getting fun variations on the joke anymore. Like the first time saw the like "don't open that sarcophagus" kind of story come out. I thought that was a funny kind of take on just yeah, this is what the year's been. But I feel like I've seen 10 different new sarcophagus stories discovered in the last 7 months, and I'm still seeing people make that joke as if they're making it for the first time, and I'm just like, this isn't new anymore, guys. Like we've already, this is a rerun in 2020. We've already played this episode out. Um, so yeah, I think that's where for me the weariness of the 2020 is a nightmare jokes are settling in, is that we're just not getting new approaches to it anymore. Um, yeah. How about you, Frank? Are you tired of the 2020 jokes?
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. I hadn't really thought about it until right now, but I think I can definitely agree with that.
Yeah. Well, um, running away from those jokes into the episode proper. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review the podcast everywhere you can. And if you're feeling extra generous, you can always support us over on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. But let's dive right on in. Cam, you mentioned, and you mentioned that you actually could have talked about this last week, but we got mixed up maybe on the names. But you've been playing Genshin Impact. So tell us a little bit about Genshin Impact. Tell it like before you dive into your thoughts, give kind of just a broad overview of Genshin Impact and what it is, because I am largely unfamiliar with it. I see ads on it a lot, and I feel like this is the game I hear lovingly, jokingly called Breath of the Waifu,
Yeah.
because it's basically what anime Breath of the Wild effectively. But yeah, tell us a little bit about Genshin Impact.
Bold of you to assume Breath of the Wild isn't already anime AF, but um, no. But to that point, I would say so last week I was like, I think I played like Odin Sphere or something, because I did play Odin Sphere a bit, but Genshin Impact had kind of been like replaced in my mind by like my obsession with Hades last week, an obsession which definitely continued this week. But I will say that Genshin Impact is a semi-open world uh, like action adventure game where you are like there's RPG elements to it a little bit with the like equipment and everything. It does a really good job of uh, like so let me go ahead and give you a premise. Basically, the premise of the game is you are a traveler, like an interworld traveler. You and your sister literally spend your lives as essentially starlight, shooting from new world to new world. But as you are arriving in a world, uh, or as you arrive in this world of Genshin Impact, you are beset upon by a god of that world who kidnaps your sister and does enough damage to you. Now this is where it's cool because this is where you choose if you're the boy or the girl. Is which sibling gets because you're twin starlights. So which sibling gets taken by the god is the one that you didn't choose. And so if you are like so when you get sent to quote unquote Earth after being uh, damaged by this god, you're basically you don't know who this god is. You know that like by the scale of power that they had, the kind of like level of like where they're at, and so you're trying to figure out who they are, and you're guided by a like a mysterious guide that you essentially stumble upon as you're trying to survive in this world. And essentially, it's about the kind of adventures that you end up kind of encountering and the characters that you meet throughout your journey that are essentially so it's you and then you pick up other characters as well that can be interchanged with just button pressing and you can swap between them. They each have different like there's different weapon types that each of them have, as well as different magical element affinities. Um, it's combat wise, there's a level of depth there that is really fun and great to like sink your teeth into. Um, it never feels as though there is a there never feels as though there is a kind of walled off area that you can't go to. So much as like there are dungeons that you can't enter unless you're a certain level, but outside of or you hit a certain story point, I suppose. Um, but what's really fascinating about the game that I've actually really found myself enjoying is the use of like ranking, and instead of it just being like, oh, I level this up so it ranks up, it's about actually committing and like sacrificing other like for example if I want my sword to be upgraded I have to use components that I either find out in the world or other weapons that I've gathered. So I can literally take a bunch of these junky weapons that otherwise I wouldn't bother with and I can convert them over into improving my current weapon. And there's something really cool about that doing that for multiple characters. The different way that each weapon handles is unique and special. As far as like if you're like there's like a character who uses a bow, but that also gives you the option of doing like a long range snipe mechanic to kind of get at creatures in a different way that otherwise you'd have to go like face to face with a sword. Um, it's really great. I know that there's definitely going to be some concern about how you unlock certain like you unlock party members based on the story and like the characters you meet, but you can also unlock extra party members through a gotcha mechanic.
Yeah, because it's a free to play game, right?
Yeah, it's free to play. So their monetization is about, hey, do you want to get this rare or cool character that is a character in the game that you meet and talk to, but they are a secondary character, an ancillary character. They're not one of the main party normally, but you can still use them, and even if you haven't met them yet. And so that's a really cool concept of being like, hey, wouldn't it be really cool if I could play as this really cool character that showed up in the story? Well, you can, and it doesn't harm or impact the narrative of the story. So it's really cool. I have not gotten too deep into it because Hades is just like, if I'm playing a game right now, it's usually Hades.
Hmm.
Like today, this morning was the first time I booted up my PS4 in over a week. So also because I've just not have not been in a video game mood lately. Um, just have not been in one. Outside of like,
That's fair.
and I say that, but then again, like last night I played like 6 hours of Hades. So like, yeah, like kind of yes or no. Like I'm a little hot and cold on everything right now, but I did find Genshin Impact to have. It's a game that I know I might have been in part of the Lost episode from PAX East because I talked about it there. Um, I might have just given them a shout out because the social team and the event staff were incredibly cool and awesome and nice. Anyway, it's a really cool game. I will say there's a bit of a censorship thing that went around. That's not really a controversy because it's something that you kind of expect out of a game. The game is owned by a company and made by a company in China, mainland China. So references to Taiwan and Hong Kong are censored. Um,
Okay.
just as like a thing, like it's kind of an aside that popped up
Yeah.
recently, like when after
Yeah.
the game launched. But it's kind of like, well, yeah, of course it is because mainland China sucks. So President Pooh Bear can like anyway. I don't want to get too into it because if you want to know about my feelings about mainland China and the current regime that's in charge there under President Xi, feel free to like look up my past articles with Handsome Phantom. I've written enough about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So you think you're gonna get back to it and stick with it some more, or
Yeah, I think so.
is
I think
it?
so. I really want to explore because I've only ever been in one area, and I know that there are multiple areas that are different, and I really do want to explore this world. And the story is like interesting enough like to have it like hooking me a little bit. And I know if I keep playing it, that hook's gonna sink deeper, and I'm ready for that. So it's a great game for me to feel like, well, I didn't spend any money on it, and it's a fun game to play, and I really like the combat and stuff, and the character designs are really awesome. Because the great thing about it is it's not like these are just like copy paste anime characters that are there. There's actual like thought into a lot of like the design of these characters. Um, like there is a distinction of these characters being unique in a way that I have been very impressed with. It was something that very much impressed me when I just knew them as like ancillary characters without really knowing what made them unique, like characteristics of their that they were written with of the narrative. Just playing them as like a very much open-ended, like, oh, this is a cool game that I played at PAX East. It's further uh, it's further accented in the story and the narrative as well as things that unlock with it. So it's very very cool.
It's interesting because Genshin Impact having those like very again very Breath of the Wild open world, go explore everything kind of vibes is coming out, or comes out in the kind of the same window that what the Pathless is coming is got announced as a launch title for next gen stuff, and that very much has Breath of the Wild kind of like vibes, as well as what is it, Immortals Phoenix Rising, formerly Gods and Monsters. So it's like we finally reached that period that everybody kind of predicted back in 2017 of like, I can't wait to see what games Breath of the Wild inspires, and they're all seeming to hit now.
Ooh, I will
And
say climbing is not an absolute nightmare in this game. It's actually done very well. So
well, that's good to hear. And it's my thought there is more like it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out, and if people really enjoy that kind of open world feel, or if they really only enjoyed it because it was tied to Zelda, a franchise people loved. Because I've gone over many times. I did not like that kind of gameplay from Breath of the Wild. Um, of the three that I just mentioned, Genshin Impact is certainly the least on my radar. The Pathless was another big game from PAX East when we were all there. None of us really sat down and played it, but like the lines for it, I remember being like because that was at the Annapurna booth, and they basically had their own separate booth for the Pathless, just so people could like enjoy that one, and it was always packed. And that's the one that like certainly has caught my eye the most. And then the other one seems to just very much be Ubisoft's take on Breath of the Wild, and I'm like, that's if I'm feeling in a mood for like a go through and checklist kind of game, maybe I'll sit down with that one. And that one at least also has the tie to kind of mythology that might hook me. But as kind of you mentioned there, Cam, like Hades already kind of is filling that niche for or that itch for me. So I don't know if I'll. Well, plus there's going to be so many games in November and December that I don't know if I'm gonna bother sitting down and spending time with Phoenix Rising when it comes out in December. So yeah, but it's fascinating to me to see that like, oh yep, we've hit that 3-year development cycle that like all of those games that studios played Breath of the Wild and thought, how can we do an approach to this, are now kind of hitting, and we're seeing how they all shake out. Let's throw it over to you, Frank. It's been a little while since you've been on the show. I think last time you were on, we talked about Tony Hawk. So give us your updated Tony Hawk impressions. How's that going for you?
It's been going great. I definitely love it. Like I was already digging it. Last time I had only been able to put like a few hours into it, and now I've put many more hours into it. At this point, I've basically done everything. I 100%ed both of the games, like Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, and then there's a bunch more in there to do after that. There's a ton of challenges, and then there's also multiplayer. So I actually went into the multiplayer and was playing, and to get all the multiplayer trophies, which I now have, and I was doing pretty good. I was kicking a lot of ass out there on the Tony Hawk, both in the multiplayer like jam playlist where you actually go up against people, and I actually made it pretty high up on one of the leaderboards for warehouse. Like I put up like a 3 million point combo, and like now I'm like way up at the top.
Nice. So what does multiplayer for Tony Hawk look like? Are you skating with other people all on the same map, or is it just leaderboard stuff?
Yeah, so it's both. Like, there's basically two modes because you can go into like these sessions on in like a different sort of area, and you can just play the like this what they call like the jam playlist, and it basically just rotates through all of the maps, and it basically just changes the objective, and you're just doing different runs through the maps. So it'll be like get first person to get 150,000 point combo wins, and then some of those go will literally happen in like 10 seconds because that's not really that hard to do. And yeah, and it is just 8 people basically all skating around on the same map at the same time, which I thought was kind of impressive, honestly, because it also doesn't really like lag out, and you don't have like it didn't seem like you had like contact with people because basically like you can both go and just grind the same rail, and you just sort of like go through each other, it looked like.
Mm-hmm.
um and then there's other modes in that same sort of playlist where it's basically about like getting the highest combo, getting the highest most amount of points in a total like 2 minute run. Graffiti is back, which is like a classic mode where it's like you whoever has the highest point on a like a ramp or like a rail, it'll color to whatever that person's color is, and then you're trying to have the most amount of objects in the world painted your color. It's kind of like a really early version of like Splatoon.
I was gonna say that's what it definitely sounds like to me. Very cool. So how's we mentioned a little bit before we started recording, like you haven't really been playing too much, so this is kind of the game that you've been kind of sticking with. It's been a nice kind of like hop in, hop out game for you.
Yeah, exactly. Because like that, it's so easy to just pick up and then try to do whatever you're trying to do. Because usually there's so much to do, but usually you just kind of pick whatever the goal you're kind of going after is. And I've been tackling a lot of the challenges, and at the point I'm at now, I'm trying to get all the gaps, and so it's easy to just basically pick up, load into a level, and then you can just keep, throwing yourself at at that same like ramp or whatever as many times as you want, and then you can just kind of pick it up and put it down as you go. And so that's definitely been really awesome lately. And I'm so close because I have all the gaps for Pro Skater 1, and I have all the gaps for Pro Skater 2 except for the last level, which is this unlockable level called Skate Heaven, and it's like definitely the hardest one. It has the most gaps, and they're definitely like the most difficult. And some of them are even not even that hard. I'm just struggling with them right now. And so I only have like 10 left on that level. And when I do that, I'll have all the gaps in the entire game. So
And forgive my ignorance, but what are gaps in this context?
they're basically like designated skate spots like in the level. So if there's like two ramps pointing at each other and you jump off one and then go to the other one, that's a gap.
Okay.
And then they basically like the developers put so many in every level and they named them all, and then there's trophies and challenges and everything to get all of the gaps for like the every level.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
some of them get like difficult, and some of them aren't even that difficult, especially in premise. I just think it's like it's weird how like the level's designed where I'm like, wow, this makes this really obtuse and difficult for like no reason. Like there's one where you need to do a lip trick where you basically just kind of touch your board and kind of balance yourself like where it's just kind of hanging off the edge, and you have to do it on this like really high up surface that is above another surface, so you kind of have to go off like up a half pipe and then just like across 3 feet and then lip the top of that thing, and it's like really difficult. And I was like, I don't know why they put this one in, but some of them just get like obtuse for no reason.
I mean, it sounds like it's for the difficulty there. Keep you on your toes, give you something to strive for.
That's definitely true because it does a good job at that, where like everything, some of the things are really difficult, but it's like everything is doable and you kind of even know how to do it. You just have to do it, and some of it just takes like a lot of different tries.
Yeah, it's the well, it's like that precision platforming, but in a skater. It's like you gotta nail the jump just perfectly to get that thing that you're going after. In the same way that, like, hey, there's some Mario levels where it's like if you want to get that star, you gotta like time this set of jumps just right. Anything like half inch either way, and you're gonna biff it. So, um, I mean, sounds like standard kind of game design to me. Um, is this still very much like the Tony Hawk game that you wanted?
Yeah, I think so, honestly, especially because Tony Hawk has been bad for a long time now, and it's not even just like the Pro Skater 5 that like people point to. Like they haven't made a good one in like 15 years up until now. So I am
Mm-hmm.
like, I was even kind of just telling a friend while I was playing, like when we were hanging out, I was like, I'm just happy because like it's Tony Hawk is back, like, and it's just everybody remembers like how great it was, and it's just kind of like back in the zeitgeist. And so yeah, and it is everything I would have wanted from like a remake. And I really want them to. I don't mind if they want to go do a new one, kind of like what they did with Crash 4, because I'm sure it'd be fine. But like I would love to see them do like a remake of 3 and 4, because those are even better games than 1 and 2. And then same thing with like I told Cam this on the podcast last time, I think, but I think Thug 1 and Thug 2 would be, I think, like a great remastered package together too. And because those are also just like just two of the most amazing Tony Hawk games out there.
So in the ranking of Tony Hawk's, is this top of your list?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely probably put it in the upper tier, out of like all the games, because honestly, like 1 and 2 are still both great games, but this is just like definitely the best version of those games. And I would probably put it towards the top of like the overall list, especially because I think you've always gotten so much out of just like going back to the levels and doing things and unlocking things and just trying to do these challenges. But I feel like they really turn that up in a way that works really well, where there is just so many challenges and there is all these online leaderboards and like online multiplayer, and like it's everything we loved about it back then, but it just works in like a modern context. So I definitely think this is probably like one of the best ones they probably ever did.
Cool. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Glad you're sticking with it. Are you thinking is the platinum doable on this for you?
That was going to be kind of my last thing, is because I want it, and I want it maybe more than I've wanted any other platinum ever, but I don't know if I can do it. And it's maybe even like I could do it, but I don't know if it's worth it because I only have 4 trophies left. Like I've done everything, but the 4 trophies I have left are the hardest stuff because you have to get to level 100. You have to get a 10 million point score on a classic park, which is like pretty difficult. And then I also have to do all the gaps, which I'm working on now, which I definitely think I can get. And then after you do all the gaps, they have these things called get theirs and hard to get theirs, and it's basically chaining different gaps together, and usually it's the kind of thing where you have to chain something from like one part of the level to a different part of the level that's like completely just on the other side of the level, and you have to basically do those in one combo and kind of chain them together, and those get really difficult too, and there's a trophy for doing all the hard get theirs. So I don't know if I can.
Yeah, I think when we talked about it last time, we looked at it and it was basically like even that getting to level 100 trophy is like 80 hours of gameplay time. So it's like, yeah, you can do it if you want to stick with that game for a while. It's going to take some time. So, well, if you end up going for it, I wish you the best of luck on it. But if you end up kind of bouncing off at some point, don't beat yourself up about it. That'll be like that's my Fall Guys story at this point. Is I'm just never gonna get that like infallible trophy for 5 straight wins. Especially, we won't go too deep into this, but Fall Guys season 2 started up this week. I hopped back into that game for a little while to play through, see what it was like, and I played a little bit when they did the like mid season 1 dump of like or update of like, hey, we've thrown in a whole bunch of new obstacles to vary up the levels, and there was an element of that I loved because I'd gotten like so into the routine. I knew the paths to take, so I liked that they were like switching the order of mallets around and stuff like that. But they added so many extra obstacles in there that it just like it ramped up the chaos level of those games. I tweeted this out basically, and my sentiment is effectively like there used to be a great balance of skill and chaos to that game, and now it's just so overwhelmingly chaos that it's just not fun for me anymore. So I basically joked that the game has joined Destiny in the I loved this game until the developers made me hate this game. So I basically have little desire to go after season 2 of Fall Guys. It's unfortunate because like the new levels that they added in were fun. Like I enjoyed kind of sitting down and playing them and the new challenges there. But like all of the other levels, I'm just like I don't like. These are just annoying at this point. Like Seesaws, like was already one of the more annoying levels just because of how long that one takes to get through, and but now it's just like okay, like the physics don't work like this, period. So it just was infuriating having those kinds of experiences, and I was just I got frustrated. I was like, well, screw this, I'm out. But the game that I've really been spending a lot of time with, as a kind of we've already touched on a little bit, is Hades. I've been spending so much more time with Hades. Last week when we spoke, I think I had like 3 clears, maybe. I got like 2 or 3 more that night after after we recorded the podcast. I'm probably up in the 20s now at this point. I think I've gotten the credits rolled. I've like I've beaten the game with every weapon, and I've started kind of playing with the post game like difficulty boosts that Supergiant puts into every game. That kind of just makes like the replayable kind of aspect of those games fun. And I'm still getting new character and story things. I'm still like unlocking new relationship levels with some of the characters, which is cool. And so there's like still multiple reasons for me to kind of keep coming back to that game. Cam, did you ever get your first clear? I knew last week you had not yet.
No, I'm starting to consistently get to Hades every time. Um,
Okay,
I will
good.
say that the satyrs on Cerberus's level used to give me a lot of trouble because I didn't know you could cure yourself from the poison in those little fountains.
Yeah.
That was so I was basically getting poisoned and dying every time. But I have since then I've gotten to the point now where I fully like unlocked every level of Nyx's Mirror. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I've like found my preferred balance of which version of the power ups I want. I have a lot of those unlocked to max. I've unlocked fishing. Like I'm right now, I'm kind of like I'm clearing out stuff to give me benefits to so when I do make a strong run, it's a good run. I've swapped over. I was using Varatha, which was the Bident of Hades. I've moved over from
Mm-hmm.
using that to now using because I realized how to use Titan's Blood to unlock the aspects of the weapons, and so I've
Oh, is that something you hadn't clear or discovered last week? Because I taught somebody how to do that online the other day. Like I was tweeting up about the game. I was like, yeah, when I like the sword was my weakest thing, but when I finally upgraded it, I was able to get that. And somebody was like, you can upgrade the weapons, and I was like, yeah, you just.
use Titan's Blood.
And he
Yeah.
was like, oh, yep, I just figured out how to do that. And I was like, yeah, they don't really they like it's like a line of dialogue that kind of tutorializes that for you. It's like, hey, if you touch it again, you can like reveal the inner workings of the weapon or
Yeah.
whatever to upgrade it.
I'll,
Because yeah, like
mhm.
there was a while where I was like, what am I supposed to do with this Titan's blood? Like, and so I was just like offloading it at the shop for like ambrosia or something like that. And then I was like, oh man, I wish I hadn't gotten rid of some of that Titan's blood when
Don't,
I
don't
when I discovered what to do with it.
don't you hate when that happens? Like when you're playing a game and you just like waste a resource like that and find out how valuable it is later on.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, no,
So
yeah,
sorry, you switched away from Varatha to what? So what's your main now that
so
you're upgrading
so I
stuff?
upgraded Varatha to the aspect of Hades, which
Okay.
makes like it adds a additional like damage over time effect to it. Um,
Yeah. Well, or is that one? Because the Varatha is the spear,
mhm.
right? So aspect of Hades is when you use the spin attack, it it it's not a damage over time, but
Oh
it
no,
like
it like makes like
it,
yeah,
it gives you like a like any damage you do to that person will do more
that's
damage
it.
for a period of
That's what
time.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I use
Yeah, that's my that's my default at this point on that weapon. The one above that that like is the like you'll
aspect of
unlock
Achilles. Yeah.
through. No, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I mean like so in the menu the one below it
Oh, okay. I
technically.
see. Okay.
But like I think of it as like the ranked up kind of thing. The bonus on that one is your spin attack will shoot out, and anybody it hits will like restore health to you. But it also equipping that weapon drastically reduces your max health. Like I think by default it reduces it like 75% or something like that. But the trade off is you can like restore health by hitting people with it. But like I have yet to get a clear with that one, because it's just like I just end up being too weak.
Mhm.
And so I'm just like it's an interesting challenge for that, and it's an interesting approach to that weapon. But yeah, the aspect of Hades ends up being kind of my main when I use the spear.
I found that the aspect of the gods is usually the best one. However, I have been using the fists of uh shoot whatever they're called. But I've been using the aspect of Talos, which is the when you do the uppercut, it's magnetic, so it pulls people it pulls whatever target is like specified away from you to you,
Mm-hmm.
and so you basically can pull enemies out of their like attack animation to deliver a really powerful uppercut to them, and you can just
Mm-hmm.
like spam that on like getting through Tartarus. I don't get hit once until I get to the Fury fight. Once I'm in the Fury fight, it's still super powerful, but it doesn't you can't pull bosses with it. but you
Yeah.
instead your damage is like it still acts as though you did damage wise, so you still deliver damage to them that way. But yeah, getting that with the right boon, whether like I like to pair it up with weak from Aphrodite
Aphrodite. Yeah.
or with Artemis because if you do it where it like has a higher chance of critting, like early on, like in Tartarus level of damage wise that you're doing, you can easily like do over 200-300 damage in a single hit. And as you like upgrade it more and more, it just becomes more and more powerful.
Yeah.
But I will say like I had a really great run where I got into the Hades fight with like with one still having two death defies, but I was low on health. Um, and I got all the way to Hades' second phase, but like only got him like a quarter of the way health wise because I'd never gotten that far before. So I was like running
Mm-hmm.
into like attacks and stuff, and I was like doing terrible. I was like, okay.
His laser beams took you out.
His laser beam was actually I didn't like I immediately picked up on that and like got
Okay.
behind a pillar, but it was the like shockwave that he sends out. Like I
Mm.
kept messing up my timing to like dash through it.
So on those, if you take out the skulls, like the skulls are what like cause the
Yeah,
shockwaves.
I do that, but
Um.
like
Okay.
it's like he throws out like three of them at a time at one point, and it's like balls.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, no, I like honestly I love the Hades fight. I think it's really brilliant. I don't like that it's in two phases. That sucks. Uh,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I mean it does make sense. Like that fight alone, like the it's so interesting because like you get there, you're finally there, and Hades is up there, and then he just like waxes poetically every time.
Yeah.
And at that point Zag is just like done with it. He goes like, just shut up and fight me. Like I'm tired of this. Like I'm like you're
I
stopping me from getting out.
yeah. I don't want to spoil it, but there's some like moments with him that were some of the funniest in the game for me. And especially in how they pay off. Like Zag will kind of like comment on some of the things that Hades doing up there, and I just like I love so many of those things. Now that you've beaten the Theseus fight, I alluded to a thing last week that I want to circle back with you. There's like one shade in there that is like
Yeah,
your
your
fan,
fan.
and I love just going over to that shade after I've won and just hearing whatever Zag says to him, like "This was for you, Shade," or "Thanks for your support. I couldn't have done it without you," or that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. I just love, I love the relationship that I've made with that like one completely nondescript shade that's just like you can tell it's different because it's red, and it's one of those things. Like I was hoping that as like I got more and more through that like more and more shades would turn into like red fans of mine or something like that. But they did not. So,
No, like
but
Theseus.
yeah,
Theseus is
that Theseus fight still gives me a hard time sometimes. I hate deal with his shield.
Oh, one of the things I got. So I unlocked Demeter as like one of the gods that'll show up.
Yeah,
She
yeah. You unlock that the first after your first fight at
yeah.
Hades.
So I did that, and then but her cast is the best. It's
Oh, the
yeah,
ice
the
beam.
ice beam
Yeah,
from the crystal. Like
yeah.
honestly, like what I like my go-to that I found very successful if I get her cast is I will set up all three of them in front of Asterius, and then
Mm-hmm.
just like go and just like run around and like attack Theseus in the meantime, and
Yeah.
just like run around and dodge, and then like rinse and repeat that process. And I've wiped out Asterius like way earlier than Theseus with that method. And then what I do is after Asterius is gone, I set up the crystal so that he's blocking it, and then I go behind and I murder him.
Yeah.
I make him regret the day that he was ever sent to Elysium for his great deeds. Although I wish at some point like he just stopped being such a prick. Like he never stops, and
I've seen a couple different layers of Theseus. I will say
Okay,
that.
cool.
Like he's still always a prick, but like at some time, like especially after. So one of the they're called packs of punishment. After you've beaten Hades, you can basically start adding those like modifiers to the game to make things harder. And one of them is I think called extreme measures, and it's basically like each level of that you add changes the boss fight. So like the first level you add it, it changes the Furies fight. The second level you add it, it changes the Hydra fight. The third level you add, it changes the Theseus and Arterius fight. And then the fourth level, once you get there, like you have to unlock it first, but you can eventually change the Hades fight. And it basically adds like just a new wrinkle to that fight, and adding it to the Theseus fight and then beating Theseus. At least in how it played out for me, I don't know if it's tied to that specific, but he became very insecure because he like had this extra ability and this extra new thing, and I still beat him. And he was very like the next time I went and faced him off, he was he was very like down on himself about that. And so I appreciated that like the dynamic shift there a little bit. And Arterius kind of starts to like try and talk him back up and like cheer the guy back up a little bit. But yeah, like even those kinds of things I just love. Like those are the kinds of things that help me stick with a game like this. Is that I feel like every time I'm going in, I'm still getting new aspects of these characters, new little bits of dialogue and stuff. But I wanted to go back to the Hades fight because one of the things that I think
I will say I've turned on God mode now. After dying a second time to Hades, I was like, cool. I've gotten the experience of like not doing God mode. Let's do God mode. And so I'm up to 28% damage resistance now. We'll see how far that climbs. Because I was watching somebody else's stream and they were up to like 56%, and I was like, and they were still like in Hades is still like a kind of a hard fight, and I was like, dang, okay, well, let's go ahead and turn on God mode, and we'll do it from there. Because I had my best friend of all time, and I still couldn't beat him, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, it Hades very much comes down to what is your build, and I tweeted something to that effect out too. Of like, I was at a point where I was consistently making it to Hades, and that was where everything came crashing down. I could go into Hades with 4 death defies, stacked up, and full health, and he would still eat my lunch. And then other times I would go in with 1 life, and I just had like such a powerful build, or such a build that like worked against him, that I was able to clear it without dying. And it's just it all comes down to those elements, and some of that is the mixture of boons. Some of it is just like leveling up certain boons to help through that. But yeah, it's a crapshoot for me really. I still kind of face that on a regular basis, where I will get that far, and then boom, it didn't work. And there will be times where I'm like I will go into it and I'm like, I know I'm not going to make this one, but whatever. So yeah. So on the Hades fight, though, I wanted to circle back. Like there are just moments in the Hades fight that I love, and this was pointed out by somebody on Twitter smarter than me, and I just don't remember who it was. But like there's beautiful symmetry between the way Hades fights and the way Zag fights.
Yes.
To the point that like even Hades has a death defy basically, and that's what leads into the second phase of the fight. And so yeah, I love the symmetry kind of between those two, especially if you are fighting with the spear, because your movesets are almost identical at that point.
Yeah.
Apart from like the extra summons that he can kind of do on it. So yeah, I wish you best of luck in getting that first clear against Hades, and then all of the subsequent ones after that. I want to say I think. So like you get like once you get 10 clears against Hades, basically that's like the quote unquote end of the story. Mm-hmm. Even though it's not really, like the story then continues after that, and you have to keep playing through more and more to unlock kind of more story beats and stuff. But that's where like I would say the post Hades shift really happens is after getting that 10th clear. And I think it was run 70 for me. That is what like I got my 10th clear on. So it definitely took a while, but I think I want to say like my best streak at this point is still only like three in a row. But yeah, it's fun. And part of that is because I've been upping the difficulty with the different challenge aspects and stuff to kind of keep things fresh. Like if I were to go through and just play, keeping everything at base level, I could probably clear it pretty consistently at this point. But you don't get any like bonuses for that kind of stuff. So really little point in doing that. So, but I'm glad you're enjoying it. At this point, I've got like so many of the codex entries unlocked. I'm probably just gonna spend like an evening at some point just sitting down and reading all of those, because like that's what I was waiting for. I was like, I don't want to read part of this and then like I unlock the next bit of the story and then I have to like circle back to it. So now that like most of my entries are complete, I think I'll sit down and just enjoy and basically like pull on my cam hat and just be like, all right, let's nerd out about some lore.
Lore
I say
me up,
pushing up
Daddy.
my imaginary glasses.
Yeah, lure me up, Daddy.
So cool. Frank, is Hades something that you've been watching, keeping an eye on? Is that something that interests you at all?
Yeah, definitely. I've been watching it through those like no clip documentaries as they've been kind of making those and then actually making the game and sort of through their early access and then now they're actually in like the 1.0.
Yeah.
I haven't played it yet because it was only on PC and now it's on PC and Switch and those aren't really like platforms I spend too much time on and so it's always harder to
Yeah.
get me like to just even pick it up and dive in. But
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to actually play this because this honestly looks like I think even their best game yet. Like I vibe with so much of what they have going on and I just love watching the game and seeing it and I can't wait to actually dive in and play it. I'm hoping it'll definitely come to PlayStation, Xbox at some point. So I'm hoping it comes to PlayStation soon and I can play it with trophies enabled.
Yeah, that's actually like the biggest thing I'm afraid of is that I'm gonna put in as much time as I've put into it on Switch when it comes to PlayStation. I'm gonna just like hop in and want to play it again, and hopefully then it'll go quicker because I'll have some kind of strategies behind me. But yeah, that's I was originally kind of in the same boat where I was gonna like hold off and wait on it, but like everybody's hyped for it, got me to go ahead and pick it up on Switch and yeah, it's almost the only thing I've played for like the last 2 weeks. And I've been staying up until like 4 a.m. playing, and just like it is the ultimate like one more run. I can do one more run, right? At like I'll look at the time, I'll be like, yeah, one more run. I can do one more run, and that ends up carrying me into like 4 or 5 a.m. And I'm like, I did way too many runs. I did too many one more runs, and now I'm gonna suffer for it. But it's still fun. I'm really having a great time with it. So definitely check it out when it comes to your preferred platform there of PlayStation. Because yeah, it's a good game, and that's another thing you mentioned, the no clip docs. Like I want to go back and watch those at this point. Because like I had my eye on them, but I was like, like I'll check those out once I've played the game or something like that. And I just need to actually circle back and do that now. But yeah, Hades is real good. I think we're gonna kind of round robin, or not round robin, snake this back. So we'll kind of do my second topic, then Frank's, then Cam's here. The other thing I wanted to talk about here is I've been a fan of Starkid Productions ever since they did a Harry Potter musical 10 plus years ago now. And I've watched pretty much all their other shows they've done since. And recently I've just been in like a nostalgic mood for some of that. Like one of my favorites of theirs is Holy Musical Batman, because I love that like approach to the superhero stuff. I love Twisted because I got to go see Twisted live. I flew out to Chicago when they did that one, and I watched it and have a picture with like the whole cast and crew of that one. That was a ton of fun. And it came up on like my YouTube recommendations, and I watched a couple days ago the Starkid Homecoming behind the scenes look. And Starkid Homecoming, for those that don't know, was last year. They did kind of a 10-year anniversary reunion show in LA. They brought 40 plus like former cast members out, and they rented out a theater, and they basically did a two nights kind of concert where Act One was going through kind of show by show, going back in time and doing like a medley of songs from each show. And then Act Two was here's, a dozen of the songs from Harry Potter shows. And it was really cool. Just kind of, they had a 13-piece orchestra accompanying them, which added fun stuff to the orchestrations and stuff like that. And some of it was just really cool seeing some of these people that haven't been on Starkid's stage in 8 or 9 years coming back and working with them and doing all this stuff. And it was just a very fun kind of like trip down memory lane for me as somebody who's, like I said, has been watching their stuff since more or less the beginning. And I really enjoyed it. And so Starkid Homecoming itself, is one of the rare ones they didn't put up on YouTube, but it's available for like purchase digitally. So I picked that up for like $20 and just kind of like enjoyed that yesterday and spent a couple like 2.5 hours watching through that. And then I just like downloaded the album on Amazon Music and just been listening to that. Granger Danger remains one of my favorite songs they've ever done from the very first Harry Potter musical. And I think it's just a wonderful duet there between Ron Weasley and Draco Malfoy. And so I like was playing that on repeat for a little while I was doing like runs of Hades. And it was just, it was something that I just very much needed, with some kind of like, got some bad news kind of this week, that I won't get into in the show, but like, Cam and Frank know a little bit about. So I was like, I needed something to kind of like somewhat lift me out of a funk. Didn't do like the full job, but it helped. And kind of visiting that comfort food of Starkid and their fun brand of humor, especially like it's fun to watch their Harry Potter stuff because I can watch it and not feel like I'm supporting J.K. Rowling at all right now. So that's a great feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to kind of just support their very unauthorized parody stuff, and still get that Harry Potter fix without lining pockets of a transphobe. So that's lovely. And then, just so many of the other shows, like some of the, so they go through every one of their shows, and I haven't watched or listened to anything from Me and My Dick probably in 7 years.
You mentioned that before the show, and I was like, dang, I have not thought about Me and My Dick in like a good chunk of time.
Yeah, like that and Starship are just a couple that like
Starship is horribly underrated. Horribly underrated. Like that's such as an original property. With like that's just like an amazing parody of, like I put Starship up there with like Hot Shots or like The Naked Gun. Like it's that level of like high quality parody that is just so unbelievably good, and they did it with puppets, and it's amazing.
And so like, because that was the second original one they did after like the Harry Potter stuff, and I, as somebody who like hasn't really seen any of the stuff it's parodying, so many of the things it's parodying it's lost on me. So that's one, like, I watched it like a few times back when it originally came out, but it just didn't like catch it, like it never really caught on or hooked me. But still, like watching the medley and hearing them be like, I want to be a Starship Ranger, I was like, that still floods back, and just like they did some great music. And so like stuff like that, stuff like, again, Me and My Dick, like some of those things that I haven't thought about in years and years and years, just hearing moments from those shows, and again seeing some of those people come back, is a ton of fun. The the big one probably that I mentioned to Cam kind of beforehand is Bonnie. I don't know if her she's got a married name now compared to what it was when she did Harry Potter, but she hasn't done Harry Potter she was Hermione in Harry Potter musical and Harry Potter sequel, but by the time senior year or whatever it was came out, she had kind of moved on and wasn't able to kind of do it, and so like that role had kind of been recast within the kind of group. But she came back and did this, and the audience loses their mind when she comes out to do, because the Act 2 kicks off with them doing Back to Hogwarts, and so when she comes out as Hermione, everybody was like lost their shit, and they did a great interpretation of, oh, I forget the number, but it's the one where Hermione's singing about how she's the smartest girl I know, and they did it as a duet with both Hermione's, and it was just a beautiful little thing. And so yeah, especially if you've ever been a fan of any of the Harry Potter shows, I highly recommend checking it out. They didn't get everybody back. There were a few kind of notable omissions, but it was still like a great collection of people coming back, and the majority of the people that you would want to kind of see back were there for it. So yeah, I really had a great time just kind of enjoying that, and enjoying kind of that trip down memory lane, enjoying so many of these songs, and it was weird having seen the behind the scenes for it first, because I guess I knew a little bit more what to expect going into it, because they put the whole thing together in with rehearsals, i.e. in 4 days. They got everybody, because they were all meeting in LA, and some of them are, most of them are based in Chicago and stuff like that. So they didn't have ample rehearsal time, and so it was never going to be like, hey, we're going to do fully staged numbers. It was pretty much, this is going to be a concert. We don't have time to put to choreograph dancing and stuff. Nick Lang in the behind the scenes talks about he's going to have 15 minutes with each person to kind of talk through, this is what you're going to do for these moments, in terms of quote direction. But most of it was just we're going to put time and effort into the music of the thing. And yeah, it was just a ton of fun. They did everybody did a great job, bang up job. And Darren Chris kind of it opens and closes the show with monologues and kind of talking to the audience about how much it obviously has meant to him and to everybody there and to the audience, and kind of the community that has been built around this thing that this group of University of Michigan kids did for themselves on a lark, and they never anticipated when they uploaded it to YouTube that it was going to blow up into this big thing. He talks about the idea that we put it up there to share it with our friends because we missed each other and stuff, and we wanted to, enjoy this thing that we had made together, and then, it just got out there and took on a life of its own. And so yeah, I highly recommend anything really from Starkid, but a couple of my favorites in particular, apart from the Harry Potter stuff, which is wonderful and certainly kind of some of their top tier stuff, but Holy Musical Batman has always been one of my favorites, and Twisted as well, which is basically Wicked but with Jafar from Aladdin, and so they really have a lot of fun with Disney tropes and stuff like that. So check out some of those if you are so inclined in Starkid. Frank, have you had any experience with the Starkid shows on YouTube?
Not much. I definitely kind of am familiar just with the name, and I think some of the Harry Potter and Batman stuff, just because the franchises they were going with. But I haven't really watched too much of it myself.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the other things. Especially a Harry Potter musical that they put on YouTube 11 years ago now at this point, I think. I remember thinking what a great model that was for theater, especially because I was super in the throes of doing theater at the time, and I think running. I was on the board of directors for Stray Cat around that time, and thinking like this is the way to go. And we've seen it, I think, more and more, these days with like Hamilton being like filmed and put out there, and made accessible to people is like do the show and make it that live experience for people, but then put it out there, especially if it's like, your own content that you're doing and you're not doing like somebody's licensed thing. Like put it out there and make it available to everybody. They used to do it where it was like broken out into, because this was the algorithm at the time, the 10 to 15 minute like segments, and so you'd have to like, if you wanted to watch the whole show, you were watching like 20 videos or something like that. And still very much is that for some of their earlier shows. But then they eventually shifted to like, hey, here's the full 2.5 hour thing as one video. Enjoy. And yeah, I remember my sister actually made me a DVD of Harry Potter musical with all of the videos like just strung together, so I could just watch it all in one go and not have to like worry about like ad breaks and stuff in between the shows. And yeah, I just like it was a groundbreaking idea for me in how to kind of like, if you wanted to put theater out there and make it, accessible to people, throw it up on YouTube. And even kind of where they've gone since the first few shows they did, they all self-produced, but then eventually I think Twisted actually was the first one that they turned to Kickstarter for, and we're like, hey, everybody, like help us fund this show. This is the idea we have for it, but it's expensive. and as YouTube changes its monetary thing, we're not going to probably make our money back just via YouTube views. So hey, help us, pay for this thing and create this thing. And that's, again, I was a Kickstarter backer for Twisted. And I backed at the tier that was basically like, hey, if you back at this level, you'll get tickets to the show. So if you can make it out to Chicago and want to back us here. And I was like, yeah, I'll go ahead and like treat myself to a vacation to Chicago and go see the show. Like even that, like there was a great experience of going to Chicago and being out there and being in line waiting with all these other people that loved this thing, some of them significantly younger than me, and it made me feel really old, because this predates probably the Kind of Funny community stuff too. So I was like, yep, this is weird, but it also helped prepare me, I guess, for the Kind of Funny community of being like one of the older guys. But yeah, I've never been like super into the Starkid surrounding community, but like I love that that's another community out there that has grown up with these shows, with these performers and stuff, and yeah, Starkid's really cool. So definitely recommend checking out, especially Frank, if you're interested. I think you'd get a huge kick out of Holy Musical Batman, if you got a couple hours to kill and want to throw that on, because it's very much, it is a beautiful mashup of like 66 camp Batman, but like Alfred is very much like Michael Caine from the Nolan trilogy Batman.
Sorry, you just
Like-
when you said that, it reminded me of him in the. It's so good. It's so good. Like
Yeah.
it's like
the actor is doing like he's doing a Michael Caine impersonation, and they throw in a whole bunch of lines like that Michael Caine says in the Nolan Batman.
they make
that's just a
they
ton
make
of fun.
reference to like people only liking the Dark Knight and like edgier Batman.
Yeah.
They make reference to like early Batman, where like the old black and white comics where he killed people. Like it's so good. Like it's so insanely good.
They really play with the idea that like Batman is just super unhinged. Like he's constantly in his Batwing just shooting people, and like yeah, he's shooting them with like rubberized bullets or whatever, but he's like relishing the fact that he is crippling these people. And yeah, they have fun with it. It's a really fun time.
Oh, Robin's so good.
Yeah. I think it stands out as like my favorite approach. And it tells, I think, even a better Batman v Superman story than Batman v Superman does. So I highly
Superman
recommend
is
it.
so good in it. Gosh, that entire production, like the way they do the boots for Batman and Superman is they got like long leg Converse done,
Hmm.
and it's so good. Like it's so on its own level of like what they're doing with it. It's so good.
And probably like I mean this is spoiler in that it's told to you in like the first few minutes of the show, but one of the most inspired choices they make is they kill the Joker. Like in the opening number, Vicky Vale's out there doing like a news report, and she's like, it keeps cutting back to her. He's like, the Joker's not been seen since falling off the Gotham Bridge or whatever, and blah blah blah. And then a little bit more of the song plays out, and then it cuts back to Vicky Vale, and she's like, this just in, Joker is dead. So like it removes the expectation that this is going to be a Joker story, but the villain they bring in
It's basically like
has
yeah,
all is basically the Joker, but they play around with that interpretation, and it is a phenomenal performance. It was this guy Jeff Blim who has gone on to do so many other Starkid shows, but it was like the first one he had done, and it was like an incredible debut role and performance for him.
it was
So
he play like
I highly recommend.
I like
that.
to call him Candy Joker because
Yeah.
he's just
His name is Sweet Tooth, and so in Batman tradition, his gimmick is that he just like everything is a candy based pun. But yeah, and he's got his own like version of Harley Quinn that's a girl named Candy, basically. And yeah, they knock it out of the park with that show. So highly recommend Holy Musical Batman. If you're looking for a fun way to kill a couple hours on YouTube someday. That is one that is broken out over like multiple videos. So, but you can go find like the Holy Musical Batman playlist basically, and it'll just auto play through everything. So, definitely recommend that. And really anything to Starkid. Like I will probably go back and revisit Starship and maybe even Me and My Dick at this point, because it's just like, hey, yeah, I haven't like thought of those in a while, but getting kind of this little nostalgic kick from the Homecoming show they did was just really cool and really fun. So shout out to that company and all those cool people making stuff for the 10 now 11 years. Circling back over to you, Frank. A couple times we've had you on recently. You kind of had been going through the Lord of the Rings films, and we haven't had you on in a little while, but you have finished Return of the King. So, what were your thoughts on Return of the King?
I really liked it. Like I thought it was definitely a good ending, and like obviously still like I'm trying to think of like a good way to phrase it. It kind of like the whole thing definitely ramps up in like a kind of in a really amazing way that I definitely really appreciate. Like I know it's what everybody probably already knows or probably already is kind of like aware of, but like it is really like an adventure, and I definitely appreciate that because it's not something you really get out of like most media, honestly.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely like, especially because you watched the extended editions, right?
Yep, yeah, I did the extended editions for all three, and then if
Yeah.
anything, that's where all my problems came from.
Yeah, so it is definitely an epic conclusion to that story, and certainly you're probably getting way more extra little character moments out of there. But like it also does add, because the extended edition of Return of the King adds the fight with the dead going through Osgiliath, I think, right?
that's correct. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So as opposed to like, I think you don't even get that in the regular edition, right? It's just kind of like it's alluded to that they helped clear out the town. No, they clear out Minas Tirith, right? So in
the actual theatrical
in the extended edition, you get like two fights with
Yeah.
them as opposed to just one where they just kind of like come in and God mode everything.
I will say that in the extended edition they did a great job of like because in the theatrical version the ships with the pirates just show up and they expect and the orcs expect reinforcements, and then the
Right.
drawbridge comes down and it's Aragorn and all of them, and they do the big charge off the boat with the army of the dead appearing behind them.
Yeah, charge to camera and then it cuts away.
Yeah, like that happens, and so it's super, like it's very quote unquote theatrical, but makes no sense from where the scene previously ended. So the extended edition actually gives us much more of a the dead agree to fight, and then um, go to fight with Aragorn, take over the pirate ships, moves down the river, ambushes the orcs at Osgiliath, and then go to the Battle of Minas Tirith and turn the tide, and then for their valor in finally fulfilling their oath to the princes of Numenor, Aragorn finds their oath fulfilled and frees them, despite the disadvantage that it puts the rest of the army at going forward.
Yeah. It's like you could have kept him on for one more fight over in front of the gates of Mount Doom, and that would have probably been really cool, really help you out. But
Well,
nope, you gotta be like noble and honor their oath or whatever. Blah blah blah.
well, it's also him fulfilling. So like him doing that fulfills a like a lot of people make that argument, but it's important to note that like what they don't tell you in that in the films, even in the extended edition, is that the the men of the men in the mountains not coming down to fight with the princes of Numenor ended up breaking the kingdoms of Gondor and Ondor apart, and like basically broke the kingdoms of men up until this point. So they were only meant to be like, and they only were supposed to fight in like that battle, that war, so to speak. So him fulfilling that was like it's also about Aragorn restoring the twin kingdoms of Ondor and Gondor. Whereas part of that was he would reforge the like Aragorn's entire story is about reforging and like bringing people together, and part of that is also like freeing these men from their curse. And so for him to like demand they go further is not only is it just out of character for Aragorn, but it also would be against kind of like the idea of that character theme for him as well. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but 100% Gimli was
So
right.
what?
Gimli was right. Like strategically, would have been way more advantageous to just keep them around forever.
Yeah. So Frank, what were some of your highlights from Return of the King here?
I definitely did like the Army of the Dead, and I mean, kind of the whole ending battle I think was really my favorite part. Overall, I did think I had to think about it, but I was like, I think like Helm's Deep is probably like a cooler fight, but it still is like the whole ending of the kind of the Return of the King with that giant kind of castle fight and kind of siege with it and all the different parties kind of meeting up, and it just goes on and kind of continues to evolve for so long. I think was definitely like a highlight for me. Um, there is also some really great character moments I really liked as well because I actually did get more attached to the characters than I would have honestly even had thought, especially because after going through the first one, I was just kind of like. I wasn't super, into many of like the people, but by the time we get to here, it is so great how like you get attached to so many of the characters and then get to see them kind of fulfill some of these things they've been trying to do, and that's why I think the end fight is like super amazing, and I love seeing kind of a bunch of different parties coming together and all kind of like I guess it's kind of like what Cam said, like his whole thing is kind of about like reforging everything, so it's cool to see everybody kind of come back to stand together finally.
Did you cry
Yeah.
when Aragorn tells the hobbits you like you bow to no one,
No.
and then and everybody kneels and bows before them?
No, I didn't like cry or anything. I think at any point during any of the movies.
Okay,
But I
so it's
mean,
just me. Cool, just me.
No, I cried at that, and that moment gets me too occasionally. Cam, the yeah, you bow to no one, to those four little guys from the Shire.
Like especially so like I watched them. I watched like half of each of them each week with the in review for Kind of Funny, and like to finally
Yeah,
get to that point after like 6 weeks, and just like no like having it so fresh like what they've all been through, to like get to that point, especially after like the hell that is Mordor for Sam and Frodo. And like I also cry when Sam tells Frodo I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you, and like puts him on his
yeah.
shoulders and carries him through, and it's just like just tears, man. Like there's
he's the
yeah,
he's the MVP of those movies, honestly.
one
Oh,
100%.
absolutely, yeah. Sean Astin crushed that role. And yeah, he's absolutely like the heart of the Lord of the Rings
Yeah,
there.
it's that's just such a. And so Frank, I want you to know something because I'm pretty sure you haven't read the books, have you?
I have not.
Okay, so a fun little thing for you, and this is like technically spoilers, but these books came out like you know 90 years ago, so like fuck off if you get upset about spoilers. But so what happens after the films show the events? Merry and Pippin live out their lives, and then decide to retire not in the Shire, but to Gondor, where they basically hang out with Aragorn. And when Aragorn dies and he's entombed, after Merry and Pippin both die, they're buried basically in his tomb with him as guards of the Citadel. Like and
Hmm.
as like his personal royal guard, they're buried with the honor like with all the honors of Gondor and Honor, and they're buried at his side. Um, so like that's just like a fun cool thing that I thought you'd be interested like you'd find interesting. That yeah.
Yeah, no, that's cool because I definitely I didn't know that. Like I was able to pick up some things for that like from the books or like that are a little bit different just from that like things that people have mentioned or even I asked for about like one or two things I thought was kind of weird. And then but so that I didn't know that though. So I think that's definitely cool.
That's something not a lot of
And yeah,
people talk.
I read the books and I don't even remember that aspect of it. Like I remember the big thing that gets left out of the movie is that there's like that Saruman didn't
Oh
die
yeah, that.
after Two Towers. He goes back to the Shire and he basically like wreaks havoc on the Shire. And so after everything happens, like the hobbits go back to the Shire and have to basically like free the Shire from Saruman. And I remember that vaguely from the books, but I don't remember how like where all of the characters ended up. Because I read those what like 2003 I think is when I read the trilogy. So that's that's way too long ago to for that like last I don't know 10 chapters of that book to be sticking in my brain.
I remember. I
Um,
like that's the thing. I love the books and the story so much. For
mhm.
example, Frank, do you know why Gimli getting 3 hairs from Galadriel was so incredible?
Oh, that one I do actually
You do
know.
know that
Yeah.
one? Okay, good. That one's a
Yeah.
really well known one, but I was asking just in case you didn't know because it's a cool story. Um,
I feel like we talked
oh,
about
did
that one
we?
on the
Okay, there we
show.
go. There we go.
Probably,
Probably,
yeah,
probably I mentioned it.
probably back when we talked about Fellowship of the Ring 3 months ago or whatever it was.
Yeah, because I watched
Yeah,
Return of the King like a while ago. Like I watched kind of the movies. It was a little bit drawn out, but it was in quicker succession. But we just haven't
yeah,
had the chance to like talk about it.
yeah. To really circle back to it. So yeah, I'm glad you've enjoyed them at this point. And yeah, there's like those are I think so like it's a testament to Weta and Peter Jackson and stuff, but those I think really still hold up here 15 years later, 15 almost 20 years later, compared to when they originally came out, especially compared to like so much of the other CGI of the era.
Hmm.
Like the fact that there's just so much practical to those movies helps really keep them alive and keep them going
I,
It's
here in
yeah, it's kind of
2025.
crazy because the scenes with Gollum. It's funny because in the documentary behind the scenes, uh, like Peter Jackson talks about like the anxiety that he had and the fear he had while he was filming the quote unquote Gollum scenes because especially the scenes where Gollum's alone, there's nobody there in those scenes. They're
Yeah,
just it's just landscape that they're shooting over. And he was just like, I really, really, really hope that this footage is not going to waste because like they would take like a day to record an entire like Gollum being alone stuff for and like setting up specifically so that they could CGI it later and like really 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 like needing it to work out. Like the one where Gollum's about to ambush Sam and Frodo in Two Towers and he's like on the ledge and he's climbing down and then like Sam and Frodo like capture him there. That entire beginning of that scene where Gollum is like crawling down the mountain upside down is 100% CGI. There's no actor there, and like that's one of those scenes that he was like, I really hope it works. Otherwise, like I don't know what we're going to do. So it's excellent. They're just like you mentioned, Trevor. I think it's just basic CGI, not too like not going super graphical or crazy like detailed, keeping things very simple but like with just enough detail for it to be reasonable and believable. And then on top of that with just nothing else but practical effects is just I think what really carries that through. And like good modeling, like good like the big scenes why they look as good as they still do is 100% because of the modeling team at Weta that I think is just or Wingnut that I think is just phenomenal. So
Yep. Any final thoughts there, Frank, from you?
Yeah, like I definitely really enjoyed the entire trilogy, and I know that's obviously not like a hot take or anything, but I didn't really think I would get as much out of it that I actually did, even though I know everybody like it's really highly regarded, and I think it deserves that. Um, but I was kind of surprised because I'm not like a huge fantasy guy, but I was able to, like I said, it is an entire adventure. It was really fun to get into and just kind of enjoy all the movies. And I agree with a lot of with what you said there too. Like I think it does hold up really well, even though it is pretty old at this point. But I think it doesn't really come off that way, except for like there may just be like a couple random rough bits, but I think from what I heard too, some of that stuff is because it's like the extended edition again, where it's like some of the things are didn't get as much time necessarily spent on them as like theatrical version stuff.
that is accurate.
Um,
The extended edition scenes that have
Yeah.
CGI, the CGI is rough in those, specifically because they did not have the like the polish of the theatrical team on them. Like they clearly had to
Yeah.
prioritize scenes, and that's understandable.
Yeah. There but even that, like when I think back to that film, like I think of a couple like pseudo rough CG shots, and they almost always like tie to Legolas and the crazy things he's doing in battle, like him hopping on the horse, like the one-handed like climb up onto the horse is a CG moment that jumps out at me, and then him sliding down the elephant, the Oliphant's like tusk or what, yeah, like that moment, like just looks a little fake, like too fake to me, but like so like those are the only two things that really jump out as somebody who hasn't watched them all that recently.
Yeah, but it only counted as one,
As like
Trevor, so it
I
doesn't
remember,
matter.
yeah, exactly. Um, so you gonna sit down and watch the Hobbit movies there,
Don't do
Frank?
it.
I don't. Yeah,
Don't
I
do
was like, I don't think so. I kind of even for a second was like, I kind of want to because I was like, I'm kind of interested at this point. I kind of want to keep this going, but
No.
literally everybody's like, don't do it, and I'm like, yeah, well, if the fans like or say don't do it, then yeah, that's like a don't do it. If anything, I might watch that cartoon from like the '70s.
That's a really good one, actually. The Hobbit cartoon is still fantastic. I will say, however, the first Hobbit film, extended edition, very, very good. Because they don't add any dumb stuff in it. Uh, it's just solid. People complain about the frame rate or whatever. I liked The Hobbit Part 1. I definitely think The Hobbit Part 2 should have been like three films like egregious, stupid, shouldn't have done it. Two films would have been good.
Yeah, if they had done it like there and back again, as
Yeah.
like the Hobbit there, and then the Hobbit 2 back
Well,
again,
it's like Hobbit:
and
The
back again or
Unexpected
whatever.
Journey, and then The Hobbit there and back again, and then that's it. Like we did
Yeah,
not need the Battle of the
the
Five Armies,
desolation of
like
because
Desolation of
yeah,
Smog, and then but like the Battle of the Five Armies especially is the most egregious, like fan fictiony, dumb stuff that I've ever seen in my entire life, and I've only seen like a third of that film through clips. Because
I
there's
still haven't.
yeah.
Yeah, I still never sat down and watched any of them. Because yeah, as soon as those things got announced as like, hey, we're taking the smallest of these books and turning it into its own trilogy, I was like, that is a terrible idea. That is absolutely stretching it out for way too much more. That is purely a financially driven idea compared to the actual needs of production.
For
And so
sure.
I was like, I have no interest in watching that.
I will say,
And
however,
I never did.
the inclusion of the necromancer scenes with Gandalf was a fan of, because that always felt like a very big missed opportunity, especially because it's revealed in the appendices that the necromancer was actually the sign of the revival of Sauron that none of them could ignore, which puts Gandalf on the hunt for the ring that we then see in Lord of the Rings.
Well, there you go.
So
I'm glad you enjoyed Lord of the Rings: Return of the King there, Frank. And I'm glad we were finally able to sit down and talk about it. So Cam, close us out with Overwatch League championships. I know happened this weekend.
the grand finals happened this weekend.
Sorry, whatever. Same friggin' thing.
No, it was excellent. I will say that this has been the best grand finals that we've ever had. Unfortunately, the first two seasons grand finals were 3-0 sweeps, or basic 3-0s. Was not even a real contest by the time the meta settled for the grand finals. This time, I will say, is probably the best that we've ever had it. Soul Dynasty, which really was had a hard time and struggled because they had a bunch of new additions. They had switched up a lot of roles, big changes in coaching staff. Can you guys hear children screaming in the background?
A little bit, but we can just press forward. That's fine.
That's fine. Okay, as long as it's not too much. I'm gonna move away from the vent that the children's voices are coming from. Sorry, my nieces and nephews are very active this Sunday afternoon.
Oh, good.
So yeah, when it comes to the grand finals this time around, it was incredibly good with Soul Dynasty kind of walking into the entire finals bracket as a big question mark, because they had shown some real improvements in the last part of the season, but with the new meta being Roadhog focused, Gesture's Roadhog kind of became a standout as being one of the best. Once again, you see these main tank leadership roles really being important with Gesture on Roadhog, and then on the flip side, the San Francisco Shock, the eventual grand champions, for them specifically being was Super as their premier Roadhog. I think that really when it comes down to it, the San Francisco Shock winning cements them as the best Overwatch team of all time. I think that there really is not any competition in regards to that question. They are it's interesting because their story is one of, they went into season 1 of Overwatch League being this is a building year. Our best players aren't even 18 yet, so let's go ahead and actually build around the future of this team and this org. And there was a big question at the beginning of the season because they weren't doing well. Sinatra, the star DPS player, last year's MVP, ended up actually retiring from Overwatch to play Valorant. So they lost a key member of their squad, a key member of their franchise, so to speak. And on top of that, you have, you also have an issue, or not an issue, but you have actually it is an issue. You have an issue of really, because of the way the meta was, there's not been a set meta because of role lock and hero pool. There's not been a set meta for everybody to practice the entire season. So significant changes throughout the season meant that other teams kind of had a lot of success. However, no team was as dominant as the Shanghai Dragons this season. The only thing I can compare the Shanghai Dragons to this season is New York Excelsior Season 1 of Overwatch League. It's that level of dominance. It's that level of success. And they saw it in the regular season. They won all the APAC tournaments. And the big narrative around, specifically around the grand finals, because what's going to happen, you're going to have the best two teams from North America and APAC play against each other. A big question that came into it was, well, are we just going to see APAC stomp out North America? And Philadelphia Fusion, which was the other North American team that went over, that was the case. They got 3-0 swept every single match they were in. It's like Philadelphia wasted money on plane tickets to get their guys over there. In South Korea, where the grand finals took place. But here's the thing, San Francisco Shock completely upset that narrative, because not only did they just take Shanghai to task, outplaying them, outmaneuvering them, out-strategizing them. Just keen insight on everything they were doing in regards to it. Um, but on top of that, you had everybody was like, well, it looks like it's Shanghai's like grand finals to lose, and it certainly was, because not only did the Dragons get outplayed by the San Francisco Shock, the Dragons also got outplayed by the Seoul Dynasty in the losers bracket finals. Seoul Dynasty upset the entire APAC bracket and gunned their way through the losers bracket after losing to San Francisco Shock on Thursday. Just broke through and through the entire losers bracket in a dominant fashion, went up against the San Francisco Shock, and in a 4-2 win, San Francisco Shock beat Seoul Dynasty. I do have to say though, I completely blame those two losses on the fact that they were playing like they played Smurf, who is not a Roadhog specialist, or like is not good at Roadhog, in the Roadhog slot for that, and they like 100% like that's what I actually blame on it. Like they should have had Super in for those two maps, but I digress, because the fifth map was King of the Hill, and King of the Hill, and Smurf is just a dominant either Orisa Winston or ball player. So did great on that. They ended up winning it out, clutching it out. I think they could have done so in a much more dominant fashion, but at the same time, we got to see like these were close matches. These were close fights. Things went back and forth. Things like you did not expect some of these turnarounds. It was just extremely, extremely good, extremely successful as far as like entertainment value goes for grand finals. But without a doubt, the San Francisco Shock are the best team in Overwatch. What happens next season's up in the air, but without a doubt, and it's interesting because the San Francisco Shock actually, in industry accolades and even in league accolades, didn't get as many awards and were looked over, and came into Korea, won in a dominant fashion, and has actually upset the idea. Last season, they upset the idea that the way to success was to have a full Korean roster. Their season 2 team was a heavily mixed roster, and then on top of that, being a heavily mixed roster, this season continuing that trend, but on top of it, dominating a Korean team. Not just a Korean team, the only it's a full Korean roster, but on top of that, they are the team representing Seoul, South Korea, and in an effort that is completely like mind-boggling to people who follow esports, dominating in South Korea against a full Korean roster South Korean team is insane. But it's 100%. This is just the proof that where you're from is not necessarily what matters. It's the kind of team that you put together. It's your composition, and it's the willingness for members of your team to adapt to each other, to learn from each other, to work with each other in a way that is, positive and beneficial and can produce these kinds of results. And you really have something really special with the staff of the San Francisco Shock. And shout out to Andy Miller, whose pockets just got fatter. He's the owner of NRG and the NRG, which is the owner of the San Francisco Shock, but he's also a part owner of the Golden State Warriors. So.
All right.
Yeah, sorry, I got really excited about that. But anyway.
Yeah, Frank, I know for a while there you were super into Overwatch itself. Did you ever really get into the Overwatch League stuff?
I did a little bit when it was first starting out, and then I kind of fell out of it. And then the actual Overwatch itself, I've definitely been out of the game for a while now. I still kind of tangentially follow, but I haven't played or followed it too closely in a while. But I appreciate what they're doing, and I feel like they're really doing a good job of just pushing the esports medium forward for everybody.
Cool. I certainly still have nothing I can add to the conversation. So, I think after Cam's kind of rundown, I think we can probably call it there. And that's gonna do it for this week's episode. Thank you guys for sitting down and joining me. Let's go around and make any kind of metaphorical plug. No, damn it! Let's go around the metaphorical table and make any plugs we have. I eventually, like, I have it written. I don't know why I just don't read what is in the doc here. Let's go around the metaphorical table with any plugs. That is verbatim what I have written. Cameron, you can follow Cameron at RevCabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to, Cam?
Yep, shout out to my Joker amiibo that just got here today. I'm super pumped.
Nice. You can find Frank at Irrelevant Jokes on Twitter. Anything you want to give a plug to, Frank?
Shout out to all the Joker amiibos that are making everybody happy this today and this week.
All right. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I don't have a Joker amiibo, but I did get my Mario 35 pins that were like part of the, you had to do 5 or 6 different things through my Nintendo to be eligible to pick those up. Those arrived yesterday, so I got my Mario pins. So yay for that. And also I want to give a shout out to, I plugged this last week too, but my appearance on One Big Topic with Mario Not Bros, aka Mario Piquadio. You can go check out me and him sitting down and discussing, quote, the dream about getting into video games, and how that dream has changed over the years, and kind of it effectively is like me, like a retrospective of like my 5 years since end of 2014, basically, almost 6 years now, I guess, then, up through kind of That Nerdy Site and what this year has been, as well as Mario's kind of journey from his perspective, and kind of the ups and downs of trying to get into video games industry and content creation and all that stuff. You can go check that out on his YouTube or his Twitter at Mario Not Bros. And yeah, you can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, or check out thatnerdysite.com for all the latest content from us. If you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, and maybe even consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, where every patron gets early access to a monthly bonus episode of this show. This month's episode, super worth it $1 in my opinion. It is the three of us sitting down with special guest Brandon Gann, doing the PlayStation 4 exclusives bracket that they did on PS I Love You a few weeks back, a couple months back now, I guess, probably. Kind of running down and coming up with what the That Nerdy Site best PlayStation 4 exclusive is. And RNGesus definitely liked having some fun and bringing that chaos energy that day. And that episode, 4.5 hours long, so definitely worth the $1 if you have it to spend, and you can support us over there on Patreon. So yeah, that's going to do it. Thank you again, guys, for joining me. Thank you, audience, for listening. And as always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.